Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us here. I just wanted to quickly thank everybody for having us here tonight. It's an honor. Sorry, I caught a glimpse, it caught my eye. Okay, the first song that we did for you was our running in song that basically announces who we are. We are the Cuangan people. And that led into a song called the Paddle Welcome Song. It's our version of the Paddle Welcome Song. It was a song gifted to us from a late elder from our reserve, Flora Joseph. And it represents a song that would have been sung back in the days when one nation would go visit another nation. The way you sang your song indicated what your purpose was, so to speak. Singing that song as we're going in would indicate, we're not going there to fight. We're, going to say hi, see how you're doing, kind of thing. So that's the stories behind those two songs. And I think we have two more songs. Okay, yeah, we've got two more songs coming up. The next song we're going to do for you is a prayer song. And this one was taught to us by my late elder, Ray Peters from Cowichan Tribes. He was the one that started the dance group back in 1978 with the Victoria Native Friendship Center. And it was run through him for a while. Then he moved away. And then my family, my uncles and my dad and my mom and everybody brought it to our reserve, which is how it became the Cuangan Grit Dance Group. And they just kept it going. And Uncle Ray taught us a lot of the songs that we use. So, without him, we wouldn't have as many songs as we do, and a lot of the teachings that he's taught us. And, we carry everything that he's taught us to heart. He was a very strong individual. He was hilarious, but he was very, very strong, very stern in his teachings, and that's one thing that we totally admired about him. I miss him, and every time we do a performance, I think about him. I'm glad that he took the time to teach us, and it was basically just something to do with the kids. Apparently, what I was told, let's get the kids to do something. Well, let's start a dance group, okay? So that's kind of how it started. So that's the story behind Uncle Ray. But the prayer song, this is a song that's, I've mentioned this previously, but this is my favorite song to sing. I use it exactly as that, a prayer song. There's always somebody that I know, and I shouldn't say always, but there's somebody that I know that's going through something difficult. A lot of times it's their health. And whenever I sing this song, I keep them in my mind and close to my heart, and I pray for them. And I like to think that, even just this little prayer helps them, and it gives them what they need to get whatever it is through whatever they're going through. So if you have somebody who's going through something difficult in their life, you don't even have to tell them. Just keep them in your mind and in your hearts as we sing this song, because it might be just what that person didn't know that they needed. So this is our prayer. Nishte, 'cause 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 'c Okay, before we do our last song, I just wanted to quickly introduce my family to you and get Philip to come back a little bit. Okay, I have to apologize. I'm sorry we don't have much of a group tonight, but we're here to represent, and we're so glad that we get to do this opportunity. And thank everybody again for having us. So we have Philip down at the end, Angela, Claudette, Eugene, Gina, Cyrus, and behind me, I'm going to move in a second, is the backbone of our group. She is my everything. She is my rock. She's the reason we do what we do. This is Mama. And I'm Beth. And we also have two that are not in uniform tonight, but I wanted to sort of put them on the spot a little bit. We have Karen and Gary up on the stage. Okay, so the last song we're going to do for you is our grand finale song. And this is a fast-paced song. This is another one that my Uncle Ray taught us, and apparently it's a borrowed song from back east. The girls will be coming out. They'll be raising their hands to you. That's our way of saying thank you, of course. And it's a fast-paced song, so if you feel like you want to, you feel free to clap along. Thank you very much. Oh, I thought he was whispering something to me. Oh. You talk about it. I don't know about that. He wants me to talk about something and I don't know anything about it. Okay, okay, from what I know, Eugene X actually created a page for the Cuangan traditional dancers on Facebook. And I think it's just exactly that, Cuangan traditional dancers. So feel free to look it up. He's going to try, I'm going to put him under the bus this time. He's going to try and keep it up to date with performances that we can do publicly and any updates or anything like that. So feel free to look us up on Facebook. And also contact information for bookings and such. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you. Have a great night.
Good day, everyone. ASIM siya nishtalacha, ASIM siya nishwalakwa. Haichka siam Naquilia here. Haichka siam Lakongantanga. Asa the Echlia. Asa Gordy Bear Jr., Baby Bear. Chines Lakongan. Chines Namgis Kokakiwak. Chines Mami in Swiss. Gordy Bear. Chines Lakongan. Chines Namgis. Chines Creamy Tea. Chines Mami in Swiss and Scottish. So good day, my relatives, our honorable guests gathered here today, those who hold distinguished titles within your communities, leaders within your communities, traditional knowledge keepers, elders, and more gathered here today. I raise my hands and honor each and every one of you, our community, here today and say thank you. I raise my hands to our ancestors who have gone before us, and to our people who are still here today, our elders who are with us today, our knowledge keepers, and my beautiful family who just shared the songs here today. The name gifted to me by my family is Theechea, which loosely translates to older sister and comes from my Wasinich side of the family. This is my son. Many know him as Baby Bear. He's also known as Gordon William Skipper Bear. Our roots to this land are through his grandfather, my dad. That family is Lahichalat Skipdick. My grandfather, my grandma Linda Dick, my dad Samet David Dick. And I've also been honored and blessed to have roots to the Kakwakialkanamgis people up in Alert Bay through my mom's side of the family, which is Norman Seaweed, the late Beverly Williams, and my mom, who's still here with me today, Hatwina Pulagua Leslie Seaweed. And then my son, his roots to the Cree Métis side are through his father's side of the family. His late grandfather is Bill Murray. His grandma his great grandma is Esther Murray, and his grandma is Carrie Murray, and then his father is Gordon Bear. It's such an honor to be able to open this event in such a good way after my family, my teachers opened this floor in our ways and our protocols. Because it wasn't long ago that we were on the shore waiting for you to come with your transportation, with your canoes. We are waiting there to welcome you in our ways that we know, which is through song, which is through food, which is through stories and much more. And when we welcome people, it's a way of not only honoring the lands that we live, work, and play on, but it's a way for us to honor each and every one of you in our ways. Because we understand that we all come from many different walks of life. You've come to our lands in a way that might have had to be for education, might have been for work. You might have been displaced from your own communities, or you might not know your communities. And it's just a small reminder from us to you to walk gently on our lands, to walk with that Aichkwalowin, that good heart and good mind. Even if you don't know what that means yet, it'll come to you. You'll learn as you walk these lands, as you learn little bits of our language that you'll start seeing around the city. So with that, I just want to raise my hand and say Haichkasiem to each and every one of you and welcome you to the place to smoke caring lands of the Cuangan speaking people of the Songhees Nation, and honor my relatives in Cope Sampson, Esquimalt Nation. Haichka, thank you. Just gonna give them a little bit of air. At this time, sorry.
At this time, Baby Bear needs his mama. And so I'd just like to call 4 witnesses, and Florence, who is from the city family and a knowledge keeper from the Songhees Nation, will explain at the end what the witnesses are to do at that point. But we just want to name and acknowledge the witnesses at this point. Maureen Applewaite, Laura Perrant, Ben Baker, and Maria. So the 4 of you are being called this evening to witness these events, and Florence will explain more near the end of the event what that means and what will happen. So thank you for being witnesses here tonight.
Did you want to say anything else? Yeah, okay. So just to share a little bit more about the witnessing, it's something that we've done in our culture as a way to be held responsible for the work that we have put out today. And as a City of Victoria family, we want to follow our Songhees relatives, our family, in the ways that we've been taught as people here of these lands. We want to be able to bring that to our reconciliation dialogues, to be able to call upon those people if we ever need them in the future to explain what happened here today. So Haichka.
Thank you, Brianna, and thank you, Baby Bear. Just a few notes of introduction from me, and then we will continue on with the evening. And I really want to thank Brianna for such a warm welcome to the Lekwungen lands, and also to thank Mama and Beth and all of the Lekwungen traditional dancers for the spirited and prayerful beginning. The Reconciliation Dialogue series is brought to you by the City of Victoria and the City family. And if the City family members who are here tonight could just stand up and give a wave so that everyone knows who you are. So that's various tables around the room. And we do these dialogues because we think it's important to share and to learn what we're learning as a family with the community, and an opportunity for all of us to come together on these lands and to learn. So tonight's theme, as you can see, is rethinking heritage in the context of reconciliation. I couldn't see the slide for a moment and it escaped my head. Heritage and reconciliation. So that's what we're here to do tonight. And we have 3 wonderful people on the stage who are going to share some stories with you, and I'll introduce them a little bit later on. But to set the context this evening, and it's the first time we've ever Zoomed anyone into a reconciliation dialogue, but we thought it was important to understand what we mean by rethinking heritage and reconciliation. And so joining us by Zoom from Vancouver is a wonderful person named Angela McBain, who is from the First Peoples Cultural Council. So she's got a few context-setting slides and some information for all of us, and then we will join the panel, and then there'll be also some opportunity for you to reflect at your tables and give us some insight about what's important to you in terms of how do we think about heritage and reconciliation together. So that's kind of the agenda for the evening, and at the end the witnesses will be called forward and Florence will explain more about that. We know that sometimes these conversations can be emotional and potentially triggering. So we do have a wonderful First Nations woman, Marcy, who is a counselor, and she's in the Langford room, which is just directly out that way. So if at any time you need anything or just need a break or a moment, Marcy is there. Actually, she's here now. Marcy, do you want to give a wave? There she is. So she'll be in here with us. She'll be monitoring a little bit, and then, if she's needed, she's there for all of us. So with that, I am going to turn it over to the Zoom and hope that everything works out.
Hello. Am I coming through okay?
Yes, you're coming through great. We can hear you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Yannick Shadis, Angie Bain, Hatch West. My name is Angie Bain. I'm a Tlakapa from the Lower Nicola Band, a researcher with the Union of East Indian Chiefs, and a member of the First Peoples Cultural Council, or FPCC, Indigenous Cultural Heritage Advisory Council. It's my pleasure to join you this evening, and I wanted to say thanks to the organizers and the nations for allowing me to join you virtually. I would like to personally acknowledge the Cuangan peoples, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, the knowledge keepers in the room and the witnesses for having us as guests tonight. I've heard your welcoming songs all the way across the waters tonight here in Burnaby, though I wish I could be there in person with you to see Baby Bear. My presentation will be brief. You will have the privilege of hearing from your city family and learning about some excellent reconciliation work from the others who will be speaking tonight. To get us started, I will offer some context for the dialogue session on rethinking heritage as we move forward together on this journey of reconciliation. While they were unable to join us tonight, I would like to acknowledge my friends and colleagues, Karen Aird and Gretchen Fox, as co-authors of the report that I'll be highlighting. We could go to the next slide, please. I would also like to thank you all for taking the time to join us. This journey of reconciliation and rethinking heritage is our collective responsibility. We walk this road together, but it challenges us all in different ways. Today, words like reconciliation roll off the tongue with ease, but this wasn't always the case. We are still uncovering what it means when we turn our words into actions. As we think or rethink about heritage, we are challenged to pause and consider. Indigenous scholar Lisa Prosper described our past preoccupation with artifacts, architecture, and ruins. As you will hear tonight, heritage is so much more. Rethinking heritage requires us to move out of our comfort zones by challenging the dominant stories of the city, to accept that heritage is multifaceted, to make space for diversity of experience, and to be inclusive of non-traditional values. Next slide, please. Indigenous peoples have distinct and unique cultures, Layered histories and rich languages. Indigenous communities have their own creation stories, narratives, laws, values, beliefs, and protocols. Indigenous cultural heritage is living heritage. Mechanisms like the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People advocate for the recognition of Indigenous rights. They set standards for our work together. Through this and other frameworks, we understand that the right to access and enjoy cultural heritage is a human right, a basic human right. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to action challenge us to address all of the impacts of residential schools. The challenge to municipalities is to decolonize spaces through action, to build meaningful relationships, to facilitate education, even when that education requires consideration of the uncomfortable truths of colonization and displacement. We've also learned that we must do this in a trauma-informed way. Next slide, please. In our paper, Recognizing and Including Indigenous Cultural Heritage in British Columbia, which we produced in 2019, our first recommendation is that we recognize and reaffirm Indigenous peoples as the owners, stewards, and managers of their cultural heritage. Direct and meaningful involvement of Indigenous leadership is needed. Only local communities like the Songhees and Esquimalt nations can share their stories, their place names, and describe their connections, understanding, and responsibilities to the land and resources in this place that we now also know as the City of Victoria. Tonight, you will hear about that work that is being done to meaningfully involve the nations. Next slide, please. Reconciliation needs to start somewhere. For it to become action and be meaningful to Indigenous communities, we need to invest to build up infrastructure and capacity, revisit existing stories to show connections between people and land in different ways, to build this work into our policies and practices, to jointly determine which stories, people, or places we commemorate, and continue to learn and relearn from each other. These are some of the recommendations that we highlight in the Indigenous Cultural Heritage Fact Sheet prepared by the First Peoples Cultural Council, and that's what's shown on the slide here. Next slide, please. We provide more detail in our report, but these are very practical recommendations to turn reconciliation into action and to ultimately change the way we know and understand heritage. I'm happy to say that tonight you will learn that the city and the Songhees and Esquimalt nations have already started this work. Since 2017, when the city declared a year of reconciliation, the relationship has grown and the work has become more tangible. Tonight, you will hear about support for the writing and telling of history by Indigenous peoples. You will learn about initiatives to recognize and reconnect people to their cultural heritage, and you will learn about other work that includes Indigenous place names, learning opportunities, and the reinterpretation of heritage by us all. This is reconciliation in action. Next slide, please. Rethinking heritage as we move forward together on the journey of reconciliation is ultimately about people, our relationships with each other, and our willingness to accept other truths and values, to embrace our diversity, and to be inclusive of other stories. In my community, we say that to understand things in the Inchnacomic way, your heart must tell your mind what to say. Rethinking heritage requires us to open our hearts to other ways of knowing and being on this land. We need to reflect on the richness of the stories available to us when our hearts are open. And we must follow through with action so that words like reconciliation have meaning. The conversation tonight will show you how Indigenous and Western stories can exist side by side. Next slide. This journey of reconciliation and rethinking heritage is our collective responsibility. We walk this road together, but it challenges us in different ways. Be bold, be brave, and be open. As the speakers tonight will show, ultimately this work creates a better future for us all. Thank you all. I hope you enjoy your discussions tonight. Thanks.
Thank you very much. That was a really helpful way to begin to frame the comments for tonight. The next little while, we're going to be focused up here, and I have with me Gary Sam, who is a Songhees counselor, Karen Tunkara, who is also a Songhees counselor, and Joaquin Caracas, who's a senior planner in the city's planning department. And we're just going to have a conversation here about some of the initiatives that the city and Songhees and Esquimalt have been working on together. I should say Chief Thomas from Esquimalt was also invited to be on this panel, but he said, I believe everything that Karen says, so she can speak for me. So Karen's representing here as well. So I know that we've all prepared some images on the slides here, and I just like if we could flip to the ones, they might be a little bit out of order, because I'd like to start with Karen and Gary talking a little bit about the place we know today as Government Street from a Lekwungen perspective. So to the slide people, let's skip through these wayfinding place names. We'll come back to them. There we go. Okay, so Karen and Gary, unfortunately, all the monitors that usually sit here are busy tonight, so we're going to have to crane our necks. But please, just please tell us how to think about your territory from your perspective.
Thanks so much. Aisquecho, ACM, Nuchelacha, ACM, Nuchelacha, what else? I'm reading the same ones. This is so exciting, sorry. Chileasanat, Lekwungen, Songhees Nation, CA Swiss Norwegian, Lehloet Thanesne, Karen Thanesne, Katsim Thanesne. Good evening and good day, my honorable friends. What an honor it is to be here. I am from the Lekwungen Nation, the Lekwungen people, specifically the Songhees Nation. I introduced myself with my names Lehilluet. Brianna, my niece, talked about my father, my dad, Lehillek, and that is the name. I have the feminine version of my dad's name. I was also gifted with my late Auntie Janet's name, Katsim, from Florence's family that's here. And my English name is Karen Tunkara. And what an honor it is to be here. And I'll just let Gary introduce himself, and then we'll get started on our slides.
Thank you, Karen. ASEAM, Siaya, Siam Nisjalicha, Thanes Nace, Sequilipton, Thanes Nace, Norman, Gary Sam, Chisalay, Etzet Lekwungen, Haichga, Quensane, Tachel, Lekwungen, Matulia. Hello, everybody. First of all, I'm introducing myself as Quilipton. That is my traditional name. And my name is Norman Gary Sam, and I'm an elected councillor for Songhees Nation. And my grandfather, Norman George, served as chief and served time on council too. And I know that, if these words of reconciliation and protecting our culture, he would have held that very dear too. And I've, great honorable chiefs and councils before me have done many good work in our community and taught us about our culture and taught us about our history. And, very humbled to be here this evening. My family, Brianna, that was a very beautiful territory acknowledgement and sharing a bit about our culture. And the Lekwungen traditional dancers, too. I belong to that dance group pretty much since I could hop. I've learned a lot about that, how we kind of branch from the Kawatsinsinkwa opera and how that was like a translation of our culture and the way that the women and the men, the boys and the girls move in our dances, and the certain songs that they explain were pieces of our culture too. And that is how we protect our culture and history, is that we pass it on to the next generation, and we protect it that way. Yeah.
That's beautiful, thank you. Did you know that it was just to keep us busy? Did you know that was why the dance group was formed? That was new news, by the way. I did not know that that's why my parents had us in that. All right, can we go to the next slide, please? All right. I want to thank Florence. She actually came over and she spent much time with us through these conversations. We had this conversation happening, and Florence kind of really summarized it all for us in sharing some beautiful works that outline not only our language and some of our stories, but where we're from, right here, and the significance of it, and what a beautiful way to weave that in to the work that we're doing with the city of Victoria. So Chilenan is this is who we are. This is our Laquanan culture. This is our tradition and our birthrights. And so it was really important for us that we open with that because that explains, the root of who we are. And as Gary was talking about, that culture, the heritage that we're passing on from one generation to the next. So it was really important for us that we feature that right out the gate because it respects our ancestors and it invites them along with us on this journey because we're not forgetting where we're from. We're incorporating that. We're weaving it into our present day, who we are, and those partnerships, those relationships that we have. And so we wanted to start with this slide because this word Chilenan, this heritage of ours, this is pre-contact. This is, as I said, this is how our ancestors brought us along and showed us how to be and how to welcome people and to invite folks into our territory. So this supersedes any kind of heritage designation and any kind of heritage information that exists post-contact, and why we wanted to start with this slide. The next slide, please. This is one of the first projects out the gate, which was Cuangan, out at Beacon Hill Park, and the what we've represented here actually is the cairns, the burial cairns that are up on the hill. But this was one of our Laquanan village sites. And it's a beautiful, you'd understand why it's a village site when you see how close it is to the water. But those burial sites are very significant for us. It's unfortunate that they've been disturbed, but some steps have been taken to cordon off and protect it. But what's important about this area is not only the burial cairns, but the camas fields that were so fruitful for us for a very, very long time, and they are significantly shrunk now. Our hope is to reinvigorate that and get to a healthy place of harvest and sharing, but that was a significant spot for us. The reason we shared this specific spot with the City of Victoria is because a portion of the park was repatriated, and the Checker Plaza, am I saying that correctly? Pavilion, sorry, I knew I was going to get it wrong. The Checker Pavilion was, that parcel of land was gifted back to the nations, and we are going to build a longhouse on it. But it's significant because that is a village site. And so that was one way to recognize heritage within the park, the public space, and what a wonderful teaching opportunity and learning opportunity for visitors and locals alike. So we wanted to feature that project. So what we've got are a few samples of some of the projects that have taken place recently, or over the last number of years actually, as Angie said so beautifully earlier, this relationship has developed over the years, and it has been strengthened by unique opportunities and partnerships and the sharing of ideas with the city family and a mayor and council that is brave to try something new, that say yes, and then give us access to beautiful people like Joaquin and Thomas, and we have this opportunity to come up with ideas and see what works. So this is one example. The next slide, please. Okay, Quasingulus. This is the place of the strong fiber, and why this is so perfect for tonight, if you will. Florence shared this with me, actually, is that this was the name for the city of Victoria, but it is the lower part. And this is what we're going to talk about tonight, is Government Street. So Wharf Street, Douglas Street, the Cook Street area, up into Rockland, that whole area is Quasingulus. And what was harvested or kept there was the strong willow trees, and the inner bark of that tree was used for our reef netting and our fishing. And so, there's very carefully harvesting materials, but making sure that it's sustainable, and that's a beautiful reflection of our culture and what we're wanting to accomplish with these projects with the City of Victoria. Next slide, please. Okay, we don't have to go into this right now, sorry. This was, I was going to refer to this later, but now I can't even see it, so we're not going to bother. This was a page out of our strategic plan that Gary and I work with every single day as members of our Chief and Council. But it's our vision, our mission, and our values. And why I wanted to highlight this, or why Gary and I, wanted to highlight this for you, is you'll see that our values and our mission and our vision, we can see ourselves in it. Every single one of us here and everyone in the City of Victoria, we can see ourselves in these values and how we come together to translate and incorporate heritage into the place around us.
Yeah, thank you, Karen. That was very well said, and sharing a little bit of history with everybody about Quasingulus. Yeah, I've had a really great opportunity to learn more about the Cuangan heritage working on these projects. These wonderful discussions come forward. Just, I really, really want to learn more beside, everybody sitting on the panel here, but as well as our community, and continuing to share a little bit of our culture and our history, because it's very rich. And we've been here for such a long time. We have our own histories, and we have our own creation, and we have our own language, and we have our own ways of healing and medicines. And, this reconciliation, is helping us as a people to kind of heal from, the attempted genocide upon our people. And, it's not easy things to discuss, and it's, not always interpreted correctly upon hearing it, but it's something that Canada's history is blemished with. And it's important that we continue working together in this way. Anatsamat, Siatala, Shwaluanala, and that we heal from this, and we can move forward, and that that's why we are all here today to kind of discuss, because there's many sides to the story of his heritage, reconciliation. In Canada, it's multi-diverse and rich with its own histories and peoples from all over the world. And it's just a beautiful time in our history now that the Lekwungen people can stand up and stand beside Victoria, BC, Tulia, and that we are regaining our history and learning it together. And beautiful women who come forward and share it, like Brianna, Florence, Karen. I thank you all tonight, because just sharing these bits of our culture and learning together with the traditional dancers too. Their stories have evolved with story sharing, and it's just beautiful to see all these opportunities and events that we could join together.
Thank you to both Gary and Karen. And we're going to come back, as Karen said, to talk about Government Street. That's really the focus of the discussion. But before we do that, I'm just going to ask Joaquin to talk a little bit about the city's initial wayfinding project. And then we'll also show you just a couple of pictures from an event that happened just yesterday. And both of these projects are about bringing Cuangan language into the everyday life and everyday experience of Victorians as we move through the city. So Joaquin, and to the folks on the slides, if you can go back right to the beginning, I think we want to look at a couple of the wayfinding slides. And Joaquin, just maybe tell us a little bit about this project, how it came to be, and specifically, how did we learn and incorporate the place names?
Thank you, Mayor Helps. And before I do, I just want to express my gratitude and humbleness being with such an esteemed panel. And I want to thank the Cuangan dancers and the other speakers earlier tonight. So thank you. So I think it was back in 2018. I mean, Victoria is a city where that people like to be, and a lot of visitors like to come and be here too. And wayfinding is really a system of helping people find their way around the city. And we wanted more people to find their way around the city by foot or bike. And so we set out to develop a set of basically signs, a system of signage of wayfinding, of navigation around the city. And an important part of that is getting from A to B or moving between destinations. And these destinations have place names, obviously. And the concept of place is very powerful. Places are physical spaces with meaning. And so every aspect about how we describe a place, how we experience a place, how we design a place, how we tell stories about a place has meaning and intention, and is very important and powerful, including the place name and maybe especially the name of the place itself. And so early on we had the opportunity to work with Elmer George, who I had the incredible benefit of meeting and working with, who explained and told a lot of stories and explained a lot of the meaning behind some of these key places that we call, for example, the Inner Harbor. Hisayacum means place of clay. And so some very, I was very honored to hear the traditional names, and we all were of some of these places. And we worked with both the Songhees and Esquimalt nations and with Elmer George to learn about these names and look for opportunities to reflect those names within what is a kind of a practical system of signs and wayfinding. But I think that powerful step of also expressing the Cuangan place name, it was certainly meaningful. Well, it's meaningful for everyone that I've talked to who's seen the signs. And I remember we went presenting to the Songhees Council, and Chief Sam let us know how important it will be for Cuangan youth to be walking in the downtown in a very place that might be very unfamiliar in ways, or feel uncomfortable or even unwelcoming, and to see their language reflected in these prominent locations. So there's a couple of slides up there that show this is shows. That's the sign at the Inner Harbor, and that's Marianne doing a blessing ceremony, because of course there's a lot of tradition and protocol around naming and names, so we were very honored and blessed to have that ceremony be a part of it as well.
Thank you, Joaquin. And then I think if we go to the next slide, this is a ceremony that took place yesterday in the Fairfield neighborhood, where the city renamed a street that was named after a colonizer who first Lieutenant Governor of British Columbia, who shrunk the reserves in British Columbia by 90% as one of his first orders of business. And we worked again with Songhees and Esquimalt and Elder George to rename the street Sayit Street, which means truth or to tell the truth in Cuangan. And just to follow up on Joaquin's point, Chief Sam was there, and so many members of the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. There were so many, and just having Cuangan language on a city street and having ceremony, as the chief said, out on the land. It's Fairfield is a very, we would consider from a Western perspective, a very heritage-rich neighborhood. And the beautiful thing about the renaming of the street, and I think we'll talk about this, and Karen certainly makes this point very eloquently, is one doesn't erase the other. Both Sayit Street and the heritage homes in Fairfield can exist side by side by side. And I think yesterday's renaming was significant, and as Joaquin said, and as Chief Sam said yesterday, this is for the youth. It's for the people who will come and see their names and their place names and their heritage and their culture as they walk through Victoria. So we're going to spend the rest of our conversation here on Government Street because this is a very live project. In fact, this dialogue is so well timed that the project is coming to council this Thursday for its consideration. And before, maybe we could put the first slide up of Government Street, but before we get Joaquin to walk through the vision for Government Street, I'd like to turn back to Karen and Gary and tell us what it was like for you to be involved in this project. And and I'll have lots more questions about that, but your overall impressions about this Government Street refresh. We came to you and we said, can you help? And how's it been? What's worked? What hasn't worked? And again, it's a safe space for open dialogue, and we know we're not perfect. So all feedback is welcome as you think through this question.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess we'll start with Government Street. We, kept meeting during the pandemic. We met online, then we met in person when it was safe to, and we walked the street and just kind of seeing where we could kind of just like start with some education and visualization of our culture too, and just adding to the city, and I don't know. I just it's just been a very overall, it's been a very great experience. Actually, I'm very humbled to be here. I keep in mind, as Karen said before, our strategic plan when we go into meetings like this, and I hold a portfolio for culture, language, and longhouse. So, something like this is close to my heart, and learning the cultural aspects, importance of this place, but as well as just the name, is invigorating to me. And hearing land acknowledgements, territory acknowledgements evolve with, including names like this, but also our culture and our history. And I think with streets like Sayit and Government Street here, I think it was Cuangan. Sorry, I'm unfamiliar with that name yet, and I'm going to learn it. But I really appreciate people like Florence who come forward and share some of that history in what she knows, and she's never backwards to come and share culture too, wherever she is, and she's been a strong voice for Cuangan culture, and just being a part of this team with Karen and Joaquin and Thomas, as a part of other city teams that require lengthy discussions. I really thank the city for giving us this opportunity to sit together and to have these deep conversations and to share what I know about my culture and my experience as an elected councillor for Soggies. And all I do is I just bring what truths I know, what truths of my culture I know, and just, you know, if it's beneficial and healing to our spirits, our souls, our emotions, and our way of knowing, then, you know, I'm comfortable sharing that. And I hope that we can continue that way moving forward, Cuangan and Victoria, and, you know, all who live here, live, work, and play. As our territory acknowledgements evolve, so do our actions. And these relationship building is very important as leaders, but as well as communities. You know, the Songhees people are here. We live, work, and play within Victoria and all of our surrounding. And the Esquimalt Nation too, and our South Island families too. You know, it's beautiful seeing so much more happen culturally, more singers, more dancers, more artists, and more tributes to our ancestors. And, you know, just having more people stand beside us of all origins, nationalities, and, you know, not just being Kwelmo, to have this kind of stuff be important to you. And just seeing this room so full is touching, and I thank you all for being here.
Hi, Chika. What was this process like for me? I thought it was really rewarding because I mean, Gary, every opportunity I can to work with Gary is always wonderful. And then to have the Esquimalt Nation alongside us, this wasn't an exercise in dividing us, which happens, unfortunately, is, you know, working with one nation against the other. And this was a beautiful example of bringing both nations together. We sat at the table as equals in a circle with the City of Victoria, and Joaquin was with us, and Thomas, and any number of staff that came in and out of these conversations. And it was a beautiful exercise in sharing ideas, because our goal, as Mayor Helps said earlier, was not to erase anything. We've experienced that. We don't need it again, and we're not looking to do that to anybody else. We know the impacts of that, and we're living that. And having to walk in two worlds for a very, very long time, we saw this as an opportunity. There is a privilege that comes with living here in this country, in this province, and in this city, and this is a wonderful way to demonstrate that, to be able to say, you have X number of generations that were born here, and then to be able to share a little bit about the culture, the heritage, the Chilean of the Cuangan people. I think it just enriches the city and the experience that we all have as citizens here and residents of Victoria. It was a very open process. I really enjoyed the conversations. As Gary said, we got to walk the street. That was really helpful to understand kind of the impact of the buildings, knowing what was there already, what was there before, and what's there now. And it is very colonial. It is marketed for its English charm, and it is absolutely stunning. This city is stunning. And what we want is to incorporate, to weave in our culture, our story. We are still here. We have been here for a very, very long time, and we want to share that with you. And this was such a great way to do that. It was a wonderful opportunity when the City of Victoria came to our council. And I have such gratitude and a deep appreciation for the opportunity to work with our family from the Esquimalt Nation, amongst our own community, and then with the City of Victoria. I don't know if I answered your question, but
You sure did. Yeah, thank you. That's a really powerful insight, that you know what it feels like to be erased, and that's not what you're asking. That's not what rethinking heritage in the context of reconciliation means. It doesn't mean erasing again. So thank you. That's really powerful. Joaquin, let's look at some of the slides, and you can just direct the slide people to the right slides. And maybe if you could talk a little bit about what we're going to see on Government Street, and in particular, how the conversations about Cuangan heritage informed what you're going to be recommending to council.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Yeah. I can't actually see the slide, so I'm not sure which one I'm on. But well, that's okay, because I'll try and be really brief and summarize all the slides. And Government Street is obviously one of the city's most iconic public spaces. It's one of our signature destinations as a city, and it's also a place of traditional use by the Cuangan people, predating settlement and contact by Europeans. Given its role as that iconic place, it's a place of meaning and identity, and it's a street that expresses the values of our city, and it's also a place, as Karen pointed out, of great beauty. It has beautiful architecture, has wonderful diversity of small shops that really add to the vitality and vibrancy, and it's a street that really does welcome a lot of people of diverse cultures and backgrounds to come and be and share the space together. At the same time, obviously, it's a street that really has little, if any, probably no representation of Lekwungen culture. So as a place that we want to express the values and an identity and the true history of our city, it's a place that has the opportunity to add some layers and expand and even fix the narrative, as Karen has eloquently said many times. And so the process has really involved what's working great about that street today and what are some opportunities to expand the narrative. So a key part of the design that we'll be bringing to council is about emphasizing and prioritizing the street for people, creating a place that encourages sitting and talking and being with other people and not as a thoroughfare. Another, though, really important component is the opportunity to celebrate multiple narratives and express those, and including Indigenous cultural heritage. We don't know all the elements now for sure, and this is the very beginning, I think, of a long discussion and process. But we do know, and I personally have learned a lot about the importance of expanding the narrative and telling these other parts of the story. So we had the great honor of partnering on a grant to Heritage BC, which we were successful with, a partnership with both the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. And as part of the detailed design and the implementation of the vision for Government Street, that will include the development of a cultural interpretive strategy together, working in partnership, and really following the lead of the two nations in developing that strategy. And just finally, through this process and working with Gary and Karen and also Chief Rob Thomas, obviously you've learned a lot, and one of the key things I think is unlearning and the processes that we've used to even have our meetings and how we share information. The processes often result in outcomes, and so the type of process does really matter for the type of outcome. So I just want to really thank both of you for all of the generosity in what I've learned.
Karen, when we were preparing for this conversation, you talked about Government Street as a place that feels culturally unsafe. And Gary, I don't know if you wanted to comment on this as well, but can you tell us a little bit more about what that is and what that feels like, and just talk about some of the cultural unsafety of Government Street from your perspective. And thanks for making yourself vulnerable to have that to share that with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. Because it's a different perspective. It's a perspective that residents have not always considered or even thought about, and that's okay. There's learning opportunities throughout this entire process, and that's what we've discovered as well, is that we're learning to So I did bring this up early days in our conversations about that being a culturally unsafe space or street. And what I meant by that was the fact that there's no representation of the Cuangan people. You're not going to learn a thing about the Songhees Nation and the Esquimalt Nation and our presence there, what was there, what is no longer there. And instead, it has been replaced and celebrated with very beautiful architecture, very colonial architecture, and no thought at all of weaving in a story, a mention of the Cuangan people. And so that's just one example. I think we actually banged out a whole list of issues and concerns, but that was a big one for us, for the Songhees and Esquimalt Nation, was that there's no representation at all. So it was really important for us that you'll keep hearing the reference about weaving in our story, because we want to emphasize this is not about now we're going to mow down buildings and erase the history that is there. There is a history that supersedes what's there right now, and that is one, what's there now has prospered because of. And so it's really important for us that story be shared. And we want our youth to be proud. We want generations moving forward to be proud of the story that's shared, the ease in which residents and visitors can talk about it because they're educated and informed as well. It's not a highly regarded secret and nobody talks about it. There's sharing to be had, to be done. Joaquin said it, unlearning to be done, and great new learning opportunities. And this is one way that we can do it. So we wanted to make that street, as culturally safe as we can. We've got a long way to go, that's for sure. But we're on the journey and we're committed to it. And the Esquimalt Nation is equally committed. So it's wonderful to be working together on this project.
In the early stages of these discussions, we did get to do the tour. And Karen keeps saying it looks very colonial, and there is no optical representation of the Cuangan people or any Salish culture. And that becomes a problem because of what I mentioned earlier, Canada's blemish in history of, attempted genocide, and ethnocide, and, we can travel across Canada and be questioned, Nobody will ever ask us if we are Indigenous, or, they'll think we are something else. And, just modernly, that is culturally the problem. Canada has been so proficient in their attempt of eradicating us from Canada, our culture, our language, our, what we look like today. And, we mentioned the Longhouse, and, that's where we used to live. Our ancestors used to live in there. We used to operate our businesses there, and we used to take care of our ceremonies there too. And these places of significance, Government Street, I'm told by my auntie that it's Singalus. It was something that we used to harvest for things for fishing. And, as seasonal people, we would move where the food is, where the medicines are, where the trade is, the ceremony is. And being one of the most significant villages here in Victoria, we have many families of the Cuangan people. We have Kusapsum, who make up the Esquimalt Nation today, and Chuknin, the Tsungaika. I can't recall all of the families right now, but we have all these places of significance of our own, because our people had cherished ways of healing visiting the mountains, our, sacred parts of the sea. And we had certain medicines that we could heal our bodies, heal our minds if we're grieving or if we have sickness. And today, we don't. We've lost these places. We can't go to these places. We can't practice our ceremonies to heal ourselves. That is what colonization looks like. And reconciliation looks like, how do we heal from here? How do we connect? Because the ways of the colonizers don't work for us. We have our own systems, we have our own way of living, and that way works for us.
So I have a question that's not on the sheet, but I promised that there would be some of those, and this is the beauty of actually having a conversation together. So one of the things that really strikes me, based on what Gary just said, and Karen, what you said earlier, that about the Camas, like Camas is heritage, medicines are heritage, and for a Western perspective, like we go through this whole song and dance about heritage designation, and then we put a plaque on a building, and they're two completely different ways of thinking about heritage. So how can we think about those things together? Do we, like, this is maybe a half-formed question, but how do we make sure that, I know that you don't want us to go put a plaque on the Camas and say this is now heritage designated. That's ridiculous, obviously. But how do we think about, I guess this is my question, how do we know if we're successful at the work we're doing together at Cuangan heritage and culture, having the same standing as a heritage plaque on a heritage building? How do we know if we're doing okay, if we're doing good?
That's a great question. I'd say it's a work in progress, and I think we're successful if we're evolving that, if we're continually improving, and we're considering different perspectives than a heritage designation. Slapping a plaque on a building to say that an architect created a most magnificent and beautiful building is only half the story. And that's what's missing, is the rest of the story. And then where is the, if there's a harvesting mechanism or a piece that's missing, where are we incorporating that? What are the opportunities to weave that into this city? This is such a gorgeous city, and we owe it to ourselves, and we certainly need it, to be quite honest, and to be so bold as to say we need that. We need those medicines. We need those food, that food security again. So I would say that there isn't a one answer, and there isn't one moment in time that is going to reflect kind of that perfect heritage designation for both Cuangan and City of Victoria residents. We're always going to be adapting and evolving and learning together and finding those creative solutions. And I think that's what's really important.
Yeah, those are great points. And I think, someday we could do a harvest of Camas or a celebration, a feast. And I think back then that would have been the indicator of success, of yields, and contributing to the economy and carrying our own business on, and marking the day as we started today with witnesses. That's a part of it, and yeah, I think that's my favorite way of determining success, if we're honoring the culture and honoring the medicine, honoring the land.
Can I add one more piece? Sorry.
Always, you bet.
Gary, you're so amazing. You always find just got the right thing to say. Gary's mentioned business, and that would be another way to demonstrate reconciliation and part of our conversation about why Government Street was so unsafe and is unsafe is there is knockoff art, Indigenous art being sold on that street. And how wonderful when we get to a place when we recognize that and we know the questions to ask and we know what to look for and what we want, because we have a greater appreciation for Indigenous representation. I actually heard recently, we don't actually call it art, but it's a cultural piece. There's an expression to it. There's a story to it. And so how wonderful when we get to that point when we don't have that economic leakage, is what I think I've been calling it. But it's happening. And so we're going to improve that, right? And there's an evolution to that. And you all play a part in that, as I say, because we're going to learn together what those questions are and what we can do to work together to improve that and ensure that there's equal representation.
Karen, that was a beautiful segue to the table work now that they're going to do. So we're going to take a little bit of a break and give our wonderful panelists some time to stretch their legs and get some water and food. And please feel free to do the same yourselves. It's now time to take maybe about 20 minutes or a little bit longer to work at your tables. And I know that this is a bit awkward because some people might feel comfortable only being at a table by themselves because we are still in a pandemic, and that's okay. If you're at a table by yourself, please feel free to reflect on and maybe even write down some answers to these questions. If you're at a table by yourself and you want to be at a table with another person or another couple of people, it's okay to get up and move. Maybe just check the comfort level of somebody that you might be joining, because it is really, and these are called the reconciliation dialogues. So we do want an opportunity for people to actually speak with each other, but we got a big room and didn't fill it because we want to respect spacing as well. The questions are in the center of the table, and I'll just read them out. And the last one, I think, is a little bit of direction for both Songhees, Esquimalt, and the city from all of you who care about these issues. So the first question is, and again, we've given you some ideas a little bit already, how would you like to see heritage defined to include reconciliation? So maybe at your table, there's a series of ideas about that. And then the second question is, how can the stories that we've told about Victoria for so many years be augmented and enhanced by incorporating Lekwungen culture alongside colonial culture? How can these two sets of stories live well together? And again, we've discussed that a little bit, but also this is an opportunity for your dialogues. And then the third question, and I don't want to say most important, but if this is an engagement opportunity, which it is, the third question is, what are some issues, ideas, or projects that you would like to see the city and the Lekwungen people work on together next? So we're not going to promise that we're going to do exactly what is said here, because we are really taking our guidance on reconciliation from the Lekwungen people, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations. Having said that, obviously you're all here because you're passionate about this as well. And so if there are some ideas at your table that you'd like to send to the nations and to City Council and City Family, this is a good time to do so. So please take the time and enjoy each other's company for the next little while. I'm going to call, I was going to say I'm going to call this meeting back to order, but I'm not, I'm not at council. We're in a dialogue. I'm going to call your attention back to here. What's that? Bring your what? We're going to bring your circles back. Thank you, Karen. As we were planning this dialogue, we don't usually ask for a report back because there are a lot of people and that would be a lot of reporting and that's part of the job of the witnesses at the end. But we did decide that we wanted to give an opportunity if there was something that came up at your table that you wanted the whole room to know. Put up your hand and somebody from city staff will come over with a microphone. Oh, we have a hand right over there in the blue shirt. So who's, Michelle or Colleen? Does someone have a microphone? Colleen, there's a person at the front who'd like to share. And while Colleen's making her way over there, or Thomas is, I met someone in the bathroom and I realized I hadn't said very specifically and clearly, please write down your ideas on your sheets and we'll come around and collect them afterwards so that your ideas can be taken back for consideration. So you don't need to feel that you have to stand up and share, but please write down the good ideas so that we can know what they are too. Okay, do you have a microphone? Please stand up and tell us your table's thought.
Well, we talked about many things, but one of the things that was mentioned is the Cuangan speaking people represent about 1,000 citizens living in Victoria. But in Victoria, there are 17,000 other Indigenous peoples from all over Canada living in the city. And how are they to be represented? How are they to be heard?
Thank you for that question. I'm going to take it as a question. And the beautiful thing about the reconciliation dialogues is that they're recorded. And the last reconciliation dialogue was called Urban Indigenous People, Guests of Cuangan, Urban Indigenous People in Canada. And that featured stories of people who had either chosen to come to Cuangan territory or were displaced from their own territories or were part of the 60s scoop. So there was a very heartfelt discussion about a couple of months ago right in this room that starts to grapple with that exact question. So thank you for raising it. And it's a really great opportunity to, I guess, retroactively suggest that to anyone who didn't catch the dialogue, watch that one online because there were some very powerful stories and those exact questions came up. So thank you very much for that thought. Did either of you? Oh. So we have Thomas, we'll go to the front and then we'll go to the back.
Ani Bujo, my name is Zofia Rogowski. I'm Ojibwe from Rama, and I'm a visitor here on the Cuangan territory. Here at my little table, we were just talking about that we would really love to see a public space where people can express culture, generate new culture in the form of art, visual art, song art, language expression. I'm thinking about my own childhood. Butch Dick, who would come into our classrooms, and his son Bradley Dick would come into our classrooms and teach us just little things about coastal form line, about the way that Cuangan people view the world and express themselves through the visual language of your arts. And I feel like a semi-commercial space, but also just a being and gathering space where people can come and learn and express themselves. And as an urban Indigenous person, the idea of being able to exchange our cultures and learn from the territory holders would be beautiful. So, miigwech.
Haichka, you've been peeking at our plans. That's all I'm going to say.
Thomas, there was another hand at the back. Or wherever he sees first. So you can keep that.
Yes, hi. I was thinking about, I'm with the Victoria Urban Reconciliation Dialogue. I'm on that steering committee, and one of the things that promote that whole process and bringing people in is to be using QR codes to bring people to the website and to other information about VERD, which is the acronym for it. So I was just thinking, if this is going to be, Government Street is going to be a walkway, or a whole bunch of different things going to happen for people to converse and to be with each other, that to have QR codes set up along the way, linking to stories, to Cuangan history, culture, all that could just be, because everybody has a phone. right? And you could have instantly connect to something, you know, significant about that street or about the area, about Lekwungen peoples in general. So.
Maybe I'll just quickly respond to that. That's a fantastic idea, and certainly it's one that, you know, digital technologies, you know, open up so many doors for storytelling and you know, evolving storytelling and not just digital audio, but digital projection as well. So those are some other strategies or opportunities that are being looked at.
Hi everyone, my name is Don Cattler, Haichka Siem. I guess I had a question, and I brought the question up earlier. I went up and asked Karen, and I just, looking through the sheet, when we talk about reconciliation is included in all three questions, the word truth isn't included at all. And I didn't hear the word truth included in any of the discussion. And to my understanding, in the work I do, I work in the provincial government and policy and Indigenous partnerships and wellness, that there has to be truth before reconciliation can happen. So I want to know what the city is going to do. It's fair enough bringing culture and heritage forward, but without truth, how can reconciliation happen?
That was a wonderful question, and I have such deep gratitude that you came up to talk to us about that. And we were purposeful in not using that term in the hopes that folks were going to get there, that they're going to understand that to be part of a learning journey, you have to start with the truth. And that is exactly how you're going to begin a reconciliation journey. So we want you to understand the difference between the two of those, and how important it is to know what the truth is, because there is an entire city built on a privilege and a truth that is not spoken and not shared. And this is one way, you know, that this Government Street project, the redesign project, is one way to do it. There are other examples of ways to tell that story, to kind of unearth the truth. But we absolutely want you to get there. And so we're, very purposeful in not putting that in there. And thank you so much for raising that, because your learning journey starts as soon as you understand the truth. So Haichka CMCA, I sure appreciate it.
Thank you. There we go. Thank you. Thanks to those who stood up and shared a few words. To those who don't feel comfortable doing it in a large room, we get it, but please do write down your thoughts if you feel comfortable, so that we can take them back with us. I'm now going to pose a final and closing question to the panel. Oh, Joaquin's going to go first, I see. And then we'll call the witnesses forward. And then we'll move on to wrapping up the evening. So as soon as we put down our microphones, we all said, what I was going to say is, or what I wish I'd said is, or what I didn't say because is. So the question is, what did you not say in the first round through that you'd like to close with?
Great question. Really briefly, I think one important part of this whole process and this journey has been, you know, as I mentioned, Karen and Gary and Chief Rob Thomas reached, you know, they connected with us at the outset of the process and talked about the importance of what we've been talking about this evening. But I think important to note also, we did a huge amount of engagement and outreach with the public, with stakeholders, with businesses, with event organizers, with city committees, and that almost, you know, to a person, the importance of expanding the narrative and fixing the narrative and telling the full story were also reflected in that public and stakeholder engagement. And of course, it's a strategic, or, you know, an important priority of the City of Victoria Council. So I think that's a very important part of the story. And then also really quickly, in terms of some of the practical, tangible, I mean, some of the things we learned is they don't have to, they can be big and small, they can be formal and informal. Some of the design approaches and treatments. It can be as simple as Indigenous, art reflected in some of the infrastructure, in some of the surface treatments, all the way to, and we heard from one of the tables, a venue for programming, for economic activity. And we also heard about digital and really innovative ways of storytelling as well. So I think all of those, a combination of those are opportunities.
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. So what didn't I say that I wanted to say? Joaquin is right. There's small steps, there's big steps. And we have to continue. We have to keep moving forward to make this happen, to really weave our stories together and to tighten them. And it's going to take some systemic changes. And I think that's what's really important to understand too. We had a wonderful conversation actually with my cousin who's just stepped out. But we were talking about the Heritage Act, for example, a system that's designed to fail because it's protecting the infrastructure, it's protecting the buildings that lay over top of or destroyed a heritage, a culture, a Chilean. And one is deemed more important than the other. And that's not reconciliation, that's not truth. And we're not going to get there. We're not going to be, we're not going to have equality, and we're not going to have the privilege of our stories being together, because you can't have one without the other. So we need systemic change too. And I think that, these are really great representations of projects, and we need massive change as well. And every single one of you is a part of that. You're a part of that in your work, in your personal lives, in how you vote, in the actions that you take in your own learning journeys and in that reconciliation journey. So I would encourage you to keep asking questions and wonder why, why is one more important than the other? Why do we rush so quickly to slap a plaque on a building before we truly understand what was there, what was removed, what's no longer there and can't be harvested, and what was the outcome as a result? Because I can tell you there's a whole lot more to that story, and there's a whole lot more under that building. So I encourage you all to ask some questions. Haichka CMCA.
That was very, very well said. I thank the panel for the closing remarks. And just thank everybody here as well. And for those of you who came up and shared your thoughts and questions with us, and these dialogue is very important in truth and reconciliation. And us, the Cuangan people standing up, I just want to mention, that in our journey as Cuangan people, we understand the system, we understand the law, we understand business, we understand science, and we just want to share our Chilangan now, our way of being, our medicines, and for those of you champions out there who share the teachings and the culture, say I see them. And all the respected leaders who get out there every day, respected community, wherever you're from, wherever your peoples, and wherever you hold dear and important to you, I encourage you to ask questions up there too, wherever you were born, the Indigenous peoples were there. And Indigenous peoples can be guests too. You've heard the Cuangan traditional dancers talk about a canoe or a paddle song where we come in peace. That's showcasing our history, that Indigenous peoples come to visit us here in Victoria, and we had a very vibrant business system where we would trade goods with other Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island. We were not restricted to this island. Our highways were the sea, and we are very well adapted to the forests and the rivers, and we could really make the best of being nomadic in these small parts of the lands, these beautiful islands, beautiful Matulia. And my ancestors shaped it to be this way, to be beautiful. And talking about heritage, I think of that. The wonderful golf courses are on top of beautiful ecosystems of Gary Oak and Camas and other medicines that are lost now, animals that are lost now, and language that is lost now. And that is what I come to think of when it comes to heritage, and then what we come to protect, and what we hold dear. And we come to show our culture in the way we know how, with song, dance, with regalia, but also we engage with Canada in the way we need to too, as leaders of Songhees Nation here. I thank you all once again for joining us in this dialogue and listening to what we have to say today.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you can clap. Let's clap for the panel. Aren't they wonderful? Thank you very much to all three of you. I'd now like to invite Florence forward. She is a member of the city family, and she will call the witnesses.
I just want to thank the panelists, my cousins, my relatives. I just want to say how important it is to talk about this subject and bringing out the stories to the city family. The knowledge keepers, besides myself, holding up the stories from our ancestors. It's so important that we keep with our traditions, and as you've seen, they blanket me. I wear my regalia anywhere I go when I speak, because I speak from the heart, and I always talk from the heart. And that was one thing that I brought out when I sat with City of Victoria, brought my teachings that I've learned. And tonight you hold such big guests in this room, and you don't even know it. You got the family of Chithaluk here, King Freezy, right here. Samat, which is where my lineage comes from. Cheathlam, these big names that are here tonight, the important roles that they lived and worked on the lands before settler time. Things that we learned, how my family and Chithaluk's family would always be close. That was the write-up anywhere that my great-great-grandfather moved to. Chithaluk wasn't too far behind. They were so close. The story of Cheathlam. When you read about our history, you're going to hear those names and hear how great they kept our lineage, our culture going forward. And that's what you are hearing today. The knowledge I know, the knowledge I speak, how you heard that I went and sat with our leadership to really educate and talk about the importance of that street. What came out of there when people would come and talk about going down to Cuangan. They already knew what they were going to do when they heard that name, was that they were going to go reef net fishing. That was what that area meant. And I was told, Lisa, I said, you know what? You changed the street names and everything. I said, for me, doesn't matter, but when you start changing the area names, that's when we start getting involved. Because it was the areas that we took care of, that we protected, and why we kept our guests, you know, to bare minimal here. We had to protect our own resources to keep them here, to show who we are and why we stand strong to this day, why we hold our guests at bay, because we're not finished telling our story yet. And that's why we say all the other non-natives here, you're only guests here. That's why you don't come and just plaque a totem pole down. Why you don't just go and put mural art up. That's a disgrace to our people, because it's not coming to do Indigenous protocol. They're colonized by that, and they don't even know it. They don't know their own teachings. When you come here and you go to the people of the land. If they really knew true Indigenous protocol, and that's my work. That's what I do. I remind people who we are, why we're still here, and how we're gonna never leave this land, ever, because of the names you've heard tonight. That name, they still carry. My name, I still carry. And these names are over 300 years old, longer than colonizers. And how they'll keep moving forward once we're gone also. Because that's what it means. It's going to keep moving forward. That's what our ancestors meant to do for us, to leave that story with the settlers when they came here. They built in our backyard, but not without a say of our ancestors. And you look at the Douglas Treaty and you'll see us right up top. How they talked about the resources that were there. They knew what was happening. And we talk about protocol. This protocol tonight is really important. This is something that I talked about when I first came. And we started talking about this. And I said, you know, when we go and do business in the lawn house, you know, we always pick people to come and give feedback, because they're the witnesses of tonight, and they carry the story forward. And myself and Marianne Alto, we were graced with going out to pick the people in the crowd. This one gentleman I picked, you know, I met him just online because of the photos that he has ties to. And a lot of people, you settler people, don't realize we never had cameras. It was you settlers that had cameras. And when your families went back to England, you guys took those photos of what you guys took of our ancestors here. And Ben, he started this own private group. And I recognized right away. And one of the archaeologists from the museum said, any platform you're on, Florence, you talk about it. And you talk to them about checking with their England families that may have photos and that are just sitting in England and don't even know the importance that it might bring to us here in Victoria. And I've had a lot of discussions with Ben on the internet about the photos he showed. They were from when we moved in 1911. It was a family that he knows, that the grandfather used to go around and take pictures and settled himself in the Indigenous communities and learned a lot about the Indigenous people, and he recorded it. And that's something, you know, is really important, because those photos were not ever seen by the Lekwungen people until we start seeing them on the internet. Now we have opportunity to actually see videos, photos that have never been out before, bringing them to our community. One photo in there, I had to correct them because they were just guesstimating years. But when I brought it back to our community, the community spoke and started telling them the truth. And I was just like, wow, you know, look at that. I was just bringing that back to the community, and they could pinpoint the years and how far off they were on those photos that he was showing, and how, you know, those photos are of our elders now. And they were just little children in those photos. And he was gracious enough to actually come and see me and introduce himself to me, finally. And I picked him because that's what it is. Want the stronger connection now, so we can view all those photos first, talk about them, and really discuss the treasures that he has of our ancestors and our elders, just from his connection to that gentleman that went in communities a long time ago. His name is Ben Barker. And Marina, you know, we just talked about, you know, smiles and connections. When you just give someone a smile, you know, even if you're having a bad day, you just smile at someone, can turn it around. And that table I went to, they were all smiling, you know. So it's, you know, just having those little bit of connections back to, you know, how we do business. And Maureen and Laura is Marianne's two that she picked. And what you see now, what is done, is that they come up and they reflect back on this day. And we start off with giving them 50 cents just for coming up. And when they finish, we give them another 50 cents. But we thank them with a medallion, and they can keep that medallion. That's for them, for being brave enough to come up and being part of this event and this series. Aich Kasiyam. All four of the speakers and the city family want to come up. Oh, the speakers can come up here. Oh, you got to go to them. You got to go to them. You go to them.
Thank you very much for being here. I want to first thank the Lekwungen people for hosting me as an uninvited guest on these territories, and for continually sharing and sharing stories and sharing culture and people and land and space. For that and that opportunity to learn, I am forever and always grateful. And so today here I witnessed courage and vulnerability and reclaiming space and speaking truth to power. And as was already said, we cannot have reconciliation without truth, and those go hand in hand, and all of that existed in this framework here today. All of those things that come together to change systems, to change dialogues, and to remove barriers to create equity. From this, I will go forward and always look around myself to see whose stories are being told, what stories are being told, what stories are not being told. How can we better tell those stories? How can we tear down those colonial frameworks that exist all around us to create a better space, and a space that takes Indigenous worldview, learns from Indigenous worldview, and shows Indigenous worldview to tell those stories in the way that they need to be told.
Thank you all. My name is Marina. I was given that name by my father because it means from the sea. So I'm surrounded by the sea and by a sea of people, and I find that absolutely interesting. What I take from tonight, as I reflect on what we've seen, is that when Florence came to the table, she came and gave me something. And that to me was a gift of trust. And what I've heard tonight is that we want to move ahead, and by giving me that trust, I think we've got one little step. So thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you all, and especially thank you, Florence, for the great honor and privilege to participate today. I'll just be brief. I work in the field of local history and heritage. I work at the Architecture Museum here in Victoria, so I'm right in the midst of this, personally in my community, but also through my work. And it's a struggle every day to when I go to work to I ask these questions that have been coming up here today to myself all the time. How can I tell these stories when I'm in the sort of the belly of the beast, you might say? An architecture museum here in Victoria focused on, as it is, predominantly colonial architecture in the city, and I'm doing what I can to change that and to incorporate the things that I've been learning here today and elsewhere into my work. Someone mentioned earlier the definition of a, correct me if I'm wrong, I could be wrong in my recollection, but a space being a place with meaning. And I think what I'm going to try to do moving ahead today is to look for the meaning even more than I have been. As was mentioned, the stories beneath the buildings and beneath the houses and the structures that are really just so superficial and passing in their existence to access these older stories and the meaning that is really behind them and at the core of our local history and heritage here, I think, for all of us. So thank you for reminding me of the importance of that today and for inviting me up to speak. Haichka.
My name is Maureen Applewaite. Forgive me for reading from notes. It's a little bit of an emotional moment for me. about 10 years ago, I sat in this room as a representative of Aboriginal neighbors to the Truth and Reconciliation hearings. I remember it all so well. At that time, I listened to the elders talk about their lost children. Now Canadians can never say they don't know, which shows that lack of knowledge of First Nations history is quite amazing. I remember the burial cairns in Beacon Hill being moved by bulldozers, and apparently that was to neaten up the park. I worry about the camas today in Beacon Hill. Who was it that said? Kathy, Beacon Hill. I worry about the camas. It's being trampled down by many paths going across. And it all makes me think that this initiative tonight will move things forward so that the lack of understanding doesn't continue. Thank you.
I want to say one more time, thank you very much. And I do want to just explain, the medallion pieces. They were done by one of our carvers on the reserve, Mike Charlie Jr. They got different patterns on them. And this represented 50 cents. And that piece, came into when the settlers came and, introduced the money part to our ancestors, and we weaved that into our ceremonies. And when we had a cultural center here, we had a whole bunch of china, and I couldn't believe that, and I asked our Grant Keddy, I said, why is there so much china? And he goes, Florence, you guys were the richest people around. That's what you guys could afford. I said, oh my goodness. But we do have Songhees tourism happening. Settlers had 150 years of creating your tourism in Canada. Songhees has just now put their toes into tourism, and we have Songhees tours in the Inner Harbor. We sell our books down there. We do walking tours. Saanich works with Mark Albany and does tours through Saanich Municipality. So all these initiatives that we're doing to try, be part and be seen in our own lands. And when you get guests, we just ask that you take that moment and take those tours and support a business from local Indigenous people of the land. Thank you all. Haichka.
Thank you very much, everyone. That brings us to the end of this evening. One more time before we leave, let's please thank the wonderful people who shared their stories and their experiences this evening. And then also we have standing behind them members of the city family, which is the city's reconciliation body made up of Songhees and Esquimalt members, city council, city staff, and urban Indigenous people who are also here on Lekwungen land. So this is the city family. And we'd like to invite you as a family to our final reconciliation dialogue of this term. It is on September the 12th, Monday, right here. And it's going to be a pretty powerful dialogue because that's where the city family, after being together for 5 years, is going to hand some recommendations to this council and to the next council and really to the next 3 or 4 decades of councils about the work that, that we think needs to continue on these lands to achieve both truth and reconciliation. So please join us again on the 12th of September. And one more thing that I forgot at the end of last dialogue, and I won't make the same mistake again. These events don't just happen. And so if everyone could please give a big round of applause to the city staff who did everything from put out the food to got the microphones ready to do all of the organizing. So thank you to the staff for making this happen as well. And with all of that, have a safe and wonderful evening, and we'll see you all on September the 12th, if not before. And if anyone missed this dialogue and wasn't able to come tonight, your friends or family or colleagues, they're all recorded and online, so feel free to invite people to tune in. Thank you and have a good night.